32 to 1, 40 to 1, 24 to 1, 60 to 1. Which oil mix ratio is best for your two-stroke? I'm Kelly from MXHideout. I've been riding two-strokes for over 15 years, so I want to share my experience, what I think are the best oils, as well as which oil mix ratio you should use for the best reliability based on your bike, your riding style, and then what to do if you have oil injected versus a premix bike. First, if you're racing motocross or at high RPM, you're gonna want the best protection for your top end. The oil is important for your piston, rings, cylinder, crankshaft, because that is what lubricates those. And if you don't have enough or proper lubrication, it's gonna cause more friction, more wear and tear. Your piston and rings and cylinder are gonna score a lot faster, and you're gonna do more rebuilds, more top end rebuilds more often. Each oil brand typically has different oils based on your type of riding style. So for motocross, if you're gonna go with AMSOIL, you're gonna want the Dominator oil. If you're using Maxima, their 927 castor oil is probably their best oil for racing, high RPM riding, because it gives the best protection. Plus, it smells really good if you're running it with race gas, although stock bikes don't really need race gas. If you're a KTM guy and want to use Motorex only, their Cross Power 2-stroke oil is a really good choice for motocross and high RPM riding. And then if you're using Klotz, their R50 is a good racing oil. Now, what ratio should you be using? Well, if you ask 5 different guys, you're probably gonna get 5 different answers. So I'm gonna start by saying, use what the oil manufacturer recommends, as long as you're using the right type of oil based on your riding style, which is what I just started out saying. But as a general rule, the higher the RPM that you're riding, the more oil you're gonna wanna use, which generally means that the smaller the engine, the more oil you're gonna need, because you're typically riding at a higher RPM, because that's where they make all the power. Where as you go up in engine size, you're not gonna need as much oil generally, because you're riding at a lower RPM. However, a good starting point for motocross, whether you're riding an 85cc or 250cc, 32 to 1 is a good oil mix ratio. 32 to 1 just means that there's 32 ounces of gas or fuel to 1 ounce of oil. So if you're doing 1 gallon, which is 128 ounces, you'll be using 4 ounces of oil. There's dyno tests out there that show that the more oil you use, the more power it can make. But if you're riding at a lower RPM, it's not gonna make much difference as far as power and protection. This is because more oil typically seals better, increasing the compression and power that the engine makes. If you're more a conservative rider on a 252 stroke, you can probably get away with 40 to 1 or whatever the oil manufacturer recommends. Now, if you're trail riding like me, you're typically riding at a lower RPM, so just above idle to the mid-range, and every once in a while getting up to high RPM, you can run a different oil, one that runs cleaner. Otherwise, if you run that race oil, it's more likely to foul spark plugs, because the engine isn't getting high enough temperature to burn all that oil, because higher RPM means the engine is getting hotter, so it can burn that oil, but lower RPM, it's not running hot enough, so you want a cleaner burning oil. This would be, if you're running Maxima, you'll want the Super M smokeless, or if you're running AMSOIL, you want the Interceptor oil, and if you're running Klotz, the TCW3 or the TCW2 will be better. Now, what oil mix ratio for trail riding? This is where it can get a little out of hand with some people. Some people still say, oh, 32 to 1 for everything. And if you care more about keeping your top end and crankshaft lubricated to reduce engine rebuilds, go ahead, run 32 to 1. That's gonna give you a better protection than 40, 50, or 60 to 1. However, I typically run 40 or 50 to 1 in my 2 strokes for trail riding, just because I know I'm not gonna be riding at high RPM and I don't need that much oil. It may not be saving a lot of money, but why use it if your engine isn't gonna need it? You can get hundreds of hours of casual trail riding, even running 50 to 1, as long as you're running good fuel. Some people will say, oh, you can't do that. They're just recommending that because they want you to rebuild the top ends more often. You're gonna burn down your engine if you're running 50 to 1. Well, if that's the case, then why do a lot of trials bikes use 80 or 100 to 1 oil mix ratio? It's because they're riding at a lower RPM, and when you're riding at a lower RPM, the engine isn't creating as much friction when the piston is going up and down, so it doesn't need as much lubricity. If your bike is running really rich and you think that, oh, I'll just run less oil, you'll make it leaner, even though that's not the right term, it's just using less oil. So if you think that your bike is gonna run leaner because you're running less oil, well, that's not really the case. And in fact, there's debates out there whether this is true or not, but running less oil can actually mean that your engine is running richer, because that means there's more room for gas or the fuel. But in any case, do not sacrifice less oil just because your bike is running too rich. Less oil is not a substitute for jetting changes. If your bike is running rich, change the jetting, not the oil mix ratio. But what oil should you use if you have an oil injected bike? As long as you're using an oil that says on the bottle for oil injection, sometimes it says oil injection or premix, you're good to go. But if it says for premix only, you don't want to use it in oil injected, because I believe it's a thicker oil or just something that won't work as efficiently. It can actually gum up the oil injection system. And if that happens, your engine's not going to get oil and it's going to seize very quickly. That can also happen if you run out of oil in the oil injection tank. So make sure that's filled up. Are you new to two-strokes? If you're wondering what's the best and easiest way to mix your oil and gas and how to do it without wasting any oil, you should check out this video here. Or if you're wondering what the best octane fuel is for your two-stroke or any dirt bike, you should check out this video here. I'm Kelly Fager from MX Hideout. Ride safe, have fun.